The gift of faith. A favorite childhood memory of mine occurred at one of our many family get-togethers. This particular get-together took place at my Aunt Margie's and Uncle Jill's house. They had a very small, modest home, but it didn't limit the number of people they entertained. People sat in the living room, downstairs, in the basement, in the garage, and outside in the backyard, which was butted up against a hill. There had to be over at least 50 people there. After a game of hide and seek with my cousins, I sat on my mother's lap to rest. Yes, I was a mama's boy. I was sitting on my mother's lap. I had to be about 6 years old because I still remember my grandmother, and she was still alive at the time. I loved sitting on my mother's lap, listening to the stories told by my aunts and uncles, along with my mom. Just then, I looked across the table and saw my mother. I thought, whose lap am I sitting on? I looked, and it was my father's cousin, Rita, who looked so much like my mother. I jumped up and went to my mother, and everyone started laughing. Sitting on my mother's lap, I said, "Mommy, she looks just like you. I mean, she's as beautiful as you." Rita, who we called Aunt Rita, said, "Aw, Robbie, thank you." My mother just held me tight. The stories went on, and one of the subjects was about the number of children each of them decided to have. My mother said her and my father have always planned on having 6 children. My aunt chimed in and said, "Wow, so many kids." My other aunt said, "Yeah, after the first one, the rest were complicated births, resulting in cesareans, a C-section birth." I asked if that was bad, and my aunt said, as bluntly as an Italian aunt could say, "Well, they cut your mother open to have you." The conversation started to scare me. Then someone asked her, how does she deal with a miscarriage after my brother Tommy's birth? I asked, what's a miscarriage? After they explained it, I sat in noticeable silence. As a few minutes went by, my mother took me to get a drink and asked me what's wrong. I said, if you planned on 6 kids and one was a miscarriage, then if he were born, I wouldn't be here. I wasn't planned like everyone else. My mother smiled and said, "Robbie, God planned to have you with us, and that's special. Don't you agree?" I said, "Yes, but they had to cut you open 5 times. That must have hurt." She smiled again and lifted her shirt to show me the scars and said, "Jesus wears his scars on his hands and his feet with pride. I wear these scars on my stomach with pride. Robbie, I would do it all over again. Now, let's have fun and play some cards." I looked back at that moment and thought, my mother and father never sugarcoated or hid anything from us. Even when my mother was dying of cancer, she bravely told us the truth. When I would question why would God do this to her, she said, "God isn't doing this to me, he's doing this for me." The moment she took her last breath, as my father held her hand, they never lost faith in God's plan. So on this day, I think how much faith a 41-year-old man and a 37-year-old woman placed in God to have a 6th child, knowing the risk they faced. I'm here today because of their faith in God, and for that, I am eternally grateful. The gift of faith is my parents' greatest gift they ever gave me.